So, tasked with the topic of talking about reconditioning during pre-season, but just very quickly, a formality, no conflicts of interest on my part. Currently a member of the UEFA Fitness Advisory Group. Just ended a 26-year stint at the Swedish FA as fitness coach for the men's team, fitness coach and sports scientist. Currently working in Mexico with Club Tigres, and that's across the men's, the women's, and the youth team, and also involved in a really exciting startup company, Photon Sports. Just wanted to start with this slide because for all of you listening, it's not pre-season won't be the same for all of you. Some of you be working at the lead and maybe at the top of the lead, and then some of you towards the bottom end of the or the lower end of the lead, and even the non-lead, and that will affect a lot in terms of facilities and staff. So at the top elite, we may be working with a staff of 20 plus people that we need to coordinate during this period. And then also duration. So in Mexico, for example, now our pre-season, we actually have 2 pre-seasons every year because we have 2 tournaments lasting between 2 and 3 weeks. So the challenges there are slightly different to maybe the conventional Europe model in Europe, whereby we may have anything from 6, 7, 8, even 9 weeks of pre-season. And certainly in the Nordic countries, that can be even longer, spanning several months. Then climate and culture. And again, maybe not too diverse in Europe, but certainly in Mexico, we're training at 7 in the morning and 6 at night to avoid temperatures of 35 and 40 degrees. And then just reconditioning, nothing new, but just a definition, the structured process of restoring or improving players' physical fitness after a period of reduced activity. So of course, we're talking about pre-season today, but that can also be after a sickness or an injury. And then by pre-season, we mean that period of structured preparation. So when we get back together as a team before the competitive season begins, where we need to prepare our players, not only physically, of course, but mentally and tactically ready for the demands of the upcoming season. It's a medical conference, so we'll just touch upon the injuries and the risk of injuries during pre-season. Nothing new to most of you, and no surprises. Research suggesting injury rates can be anything from 2 to 4 times higher compared to the normal season. Muscle strains, ligaments, overuse injuries, heat-related injuries, the most common. And then muscle strains accounting for about a third of all injuries during pre-season. I apologize for using a reference from 2011, but I don't think the pictures changed too much since then. And of course, if there are injuries, then it's really important that we identify key injury risk factors. And that's a job of, again, at the elite level, the multidisciplinary team, but even at the lower end of the elite and the non-elite, it's really important that we start to think about what the key injury risk factors are, and then how we can develop practices and protocols to reduce the injury risk, and on an individual basis. And again, just some obvious ones, but players coming back in poor shape or in poor levels of fitness, being too ambitious and suddenly ramping up the intensity and the volume, so we're basically in no time. Again, being ambitious and not allowing adequate recovery between sessions. Still surprises me to see even professional football players coming back with new shoes, both football shoes and running shoes. And also we need to be very careful about the playing surfaces. But it's improved a lot, obviously, in the last decade. Playing surfaces are a lot better, but certainly something we need to take into account. We'll touch upon nutrition and hydration later, but obviously very important. And we've already mentioned the environmental conditions. So I've tried to identify 10 pre-season training essentials to enhance performance and reduce injury risk, and we'll go through them one at a time. I've divided into 3 parts. So the pre-season, so the pre-season. I don't like using the word off-season. I think that's outdated now. I don't think it is an off-season. I think it's a really important period. This from the last day of the previous season to the first day of the pre-season training. Talk a little bit about that, then planning for that structured period and then actually the implementation of the reconditioning program. So this is one of my real big take-home messages to all my players, is that reconditioning starts directly after the last day of the season. And that's really important, that we ensure our players are right back prepared for the work ahead. At the elite level, and I'm not sure if it's common practice, but certainly in the clubs I've worked with, the training facility has been manned by either a member of the medical staff or a sports scientist or a fitness coach 5 days a week, to allow players to come in and either receive treatment or work with one of the coaches. Obviously, not all players will be living locally, but we do have people on site if needed. And also, this is something which we actually brought in at Leicester City during my time at Leicester City, whereby 1 week prior to the official report back date, we did run almost like all the fitness tests that we were going to do the following week, and then players who didn't feel comfortable could then remain at the club for that week in order to make sure that they were ready to go the following week. So that was something that I've also done in some of the other clubs I've worked in, and it's worked really well. Player empowerment is key to a smooth transition. A big believer in educating our players. And it isn't rocket science, but if we have our players on board, if they're aware and they know why they're doing certain things and why it's important, it certainly makes our job a lot easier. And it's not just about coming back in shape, but it's also increasing career longevity and mental well-being, which we all know is really important in the modern game. And that also allows us to tailor the programs that we give them. So if we are giving them work to do when they're away from the club, it can be specific to their needs. They're aware why. As I said, we get a much bigger buy-in, so we can go not just give everyone the same generic program, but we can make sure that it's specific to each player's needs. What we do need to be aware of at the elite level is that more and more professional players work with a personal trainer during this period. And the take-home message with that is communication. We really do need to be aware of what the players are doing if they're working with a personal trainer, and we should have contact with that personal trainer to make sure that we know what's going on. Keep it simple. Stupid rule is again something in probably 10 or 15 years ago, really ambitious, printing notebooks for players to take home and in the minus detail everything they should do. But actually, we need to keep it simple. We need to maintain player engagement, and we need to make everything that we do effective to avoid any or the risk of deconditioning. However, we do have to have a degree of individualization, so it can't be just giving out generic programs. And the key is communication, and it can be just simple exchange of text messages. But most clubs today at the elite level will have some form of data platform whereby we're having interaction with our players. So they may be logging in, they may be uploading data. We may be pushing next week's program back to them, or modifying things based on what we see they've done. And then microdosing, relatively new term. And basically, I think this is one of the key things for this period, the period from the end of the previous season to when we meet the players again. And if we summarize what microdosing is, it's basically we're maintaining or even increasing the frequency of our workouts and even the intensity of our workouts, but we're decreasing the volume drastically. Should imagine most of you are familiar with microdosing, but if not, it's certainly something that I would suggest that you take a look at. But key for this period between, as I said, the end of the previous season and the start of the new season. We go straight on to the planning period. Well-structured preseason plan is essential for aligning player preparation with club goals. Still surprised that I see a lack of planning. So it's really key that we all get together. And as I say, if we have a multidisciplinary team of 20 plus, we all have to be on board with the planning. And talking of onboarding, it's something, again, it's didn't think about it probably 10 years ago, but when we do, when we are at a club and we have a new player, a new member of staff, or even a new head coach, it's really important that we make sure that they're aligned with the club's culture and expectations to facilitate that smooth transition into the team environment. And it's not just about the medical evaluations and the fitness assessments, but they really should be introduced to the club's staff, the medical staff, the fitness staff, the sports scientists. They should be aware of the training protocols. We should be aware of their history, so what they're used to at their old club, what they've done during the period before we've met them, the weeks before we met them. And then it's also very important for us to share our expectations with them. And this should be on an individual basis, and it shouldn't be rushed. It's really important that we get, as I say, all new players and staff aligned from the first days of pre-season, so that we align all our expectations. Periodization, nothing new. I've seen different, the pre-season divided into different phases. I don't think there's any one way of doing this, but it's really important to help us progressively increase the intensity and workload, of course, by minimizing injury risks. But the key then is the debrief. For me, is that after every phase, there is a debrief, which then will allow us to modify the coming phase. I think friendly games, the planning of friendly games is also a really big part of the planning process. And it's really important that a member of the medical staff and or fitness performance staff is involved in the planning of friendly games, because again, I've been at a club where games have been planned without the medical team or performance team being involved, and suddenly it's been chaos, and we're losing too many days on the training ground because we're either having to travel and then either prepare or recover between games. So really important that we're involved in all aspects of the planning, and we have a very clear periodization plan. I don't intend to give you a physiology 101 lecture, but actually sometimes it's really good for us just to refresh our mind, our brain on the principles of training. Because these form the basic of everything that we do if we want to maximize the training effectiveness to achieve optimal results, which of course is adaptation, and then towards the end of the pre-season period, performance. And then again, it also allows us to individualize everything for each player. Often easier said than done, but it is really key that we are able to look at each player as an individual, and not just the physical preparation, and not just making sure they're physically reconditioned, but also mentally prepared for the competitive season ahead. Integrated versus isolated approach may or may not be new to you, or I'm sure it's not new to you, but you may not have heard it called an integrated or isolated approach. And I think we can think of a continuum whereby an isolated approach is very controlled. So if we look at the diagrams in the blue, so we may be doing running drills, for example, whereby we can control if we're running in a linear, if we're running, we have changes direction, we can control speed, we can control accelerations and decelerations, and then all the way through to total chaos during the small-sided games. So the integrated approach is the holistic, whereby it's very football orientated, small-sided games, possession drills, and other game-related exercises. And the isolated approach, we're in control of what we're doing, and we're able to focus on a specific component of fitness. And it's that art of blending the two, and probably go from the first days of the reconditioning period, whereby we are using an isolated approach, and then gradually as the pre-season, the weeks go on, we introducing more and more integrated. Really interesting topic, and trying to get this and not jumping too quickly, in my opinion, into the integrated approach. And then implementation, finishing off with implementation. A successful pre-season involves navigating multiple layers of logistics, planning, and coordination. I got a big smile on my face because after 20 plus pre-seasons, I'm sure I haven't seen it all, but I've seen a lot of things, and we do need to be adaptable, and we do need to be able to improvise. And I've actually used some adjectives here. So a successful pre-season is dependent on effectively handling a range of varied, unpredictable, complex, and even volatile factors. And it can be anything from logistics to player performance metrics. And then everything needs to be aligned. So there's coordination between our coaching staff, players, and resources, and communication. I can't mention the importance of communication. If it's session debriefs or day debriefs or week debriefs or whatever, but communication is really key so that we can align everything between the different departments. And then this is also something, again, I've learned it's more effective to plan for a higher volume of training, so double or even some instances triple sessions, and then scale back if necessary, rather than starting with a lower volume, for example, single sessions, and then either adding a session or bringing them in on a day off. So plan higher and then scale back would be my advice in that aspect. A data-driven approach is crucial. I think all of us working at the elite level now have access to data, but even at the non-elite level, there is now technology that's affordable. Enables us to make more informed decisions rather than sort of guessing, and we can use data to make better informed decisions. Allows us to customize programs to meet individual needs. We can track progress, and we can make adjustments based on real-time insights. And again, this is, from every pre-season I'm involved in, this is evolving. I always have a smile on face when I see this photo. It's my captain in the national team who's always on at me and wearing GPS, why we're wearing them and what is it good for and everything. But that was a picture taken several years ago. Again, I think it's all common now that players are used to wear playing tracking devices. And of course, it's not only the monitoring that's important, but it's the load management, that we are actually using the data to inform practice. So making interventions where we can balance the training intensity and volume with recovery, and then assuring that all players are challenged appropriately, promoting safe and effective physical adaptation. If we don't, well, even if we do have access to technology, then wellness questionnaires can also be used. And of course, they can be used on iPads, they can be used on telephones, on Google Sheets, on Microsoft Forms. So there's no costs involved if we don't have budgets. The key here, though, is that we are very, at the start of pre-season training, we educate our players as to the importance of answering these wellness questionnaires properly, so that it will inform us if the potential need for additional rest or recovery. So a big emphasis there on before we start using the questionnaires is to explain the players the importance of them and the information and feedback we can get from them. And then finally, I think I'm just about on time. Nutritional needs, again, a quick summary, a huge importance on the getting a macronutrient balance right with the protein and the carbohydrates, and then trying to tailor this balance based on individual energy expenditures, which we can easier to do it at the elite level. We maybe have one or even more nutritionists on board in a multidisciplinary team. But in general, getting that balance right is key. And then I shouldn't have to talk about hydration strategies. I think we all know how important that getting the fluids on board, and again educating the players. I mean, how much fluid should we be taking, when should we be taking them, and what type of fluid should we be taking, and if possible, monitoring electric balance is also key. So just to finish off, I want to keep the goalkeeper experts at UEFA happy. We do need to make sure that we pay special attention to the goalkeepers. They're easy to forget. They do have special and specific needs, so let's make sure that we plan for their pre-season as well. So there's just a summary. Hopefully I've been able to leave you something of the 10 training essentials we've gone through, and my sort of take-home message is if everything seems to be going well, you've obviously overlooked something. And with that, I'll